Welcome to Dream Heaven, dear one, where stories don't just whisper, they unravel. And tonight, we trade starlight for gaslight as you become the detective in Sherlock's midnight case. That's right, curl deeper under the covers, for this mystery lives between wakefulness and dreams. And if Dream Heaven has ever lulled you to rest, pay it forward, share this case with another sleepless soul. Now, let's observe the clues of sleep. Your breath, slow as Holmes' pocket watch, your limbs, heavy as a Baker Street fog, and that tiny part of your mind, still clinging to the how. Release it. The only puzzle left to solve is how quickly you'll drift into the answer. The ticking of an old clock filled the study with its soft, measured rhythm, a sound as steady and familiar as breath. In the hush of midnight, Sherlock Holmes sat wrapped in a thick woolen robe, his frame slightly slouched in a worn armchair by the fire. The candle beside him flickered faintly, casting a golden dance upon the walls, the flame swaying gently like a heartbeat remembered. His fingertips rested lightly on the rim of a cold teacup, forgotten in thought. Beyond the window, the fog pressed close to the glass, curling like breath on a mirror, as if the night itself were leaning in to listen. Sherlock's gaze lingered on the candle's flame, not searching for meaning, but finding comfort in its quiet presence. Then from the fog came the slow tolling of a distant bell, 12 notes, deep and low, that seemed to ripple through time rather than sound through space. With each chime, the world seemed to grow stiller, as if even the dust in the corners of the room paused to listen. And then he saw it, an envelope on the windowsill, pale as parchment, just slightly damp from the mist. Written in soft lavender ink, the words curved like a memory he almost recognized. For one last case, he did not move quickly. Instead, he rose with care, stretching his limbs as though waking from a dream. He reached for his lantern, its brass frame, warm to the touch, and lit it slowly, the small flame blooming like morning on the moor. The shadows in the room softened, leaning towards sleep, and Sherlock wrapped his scarf around his neck before gently opening the door. The night welcomed him with a hush. The cobbled street beneath his feet felt like the edge of a dream, each step softened by the fog that rose around his ankles like a curtain being drawn. There was no urgency in his movements, no reason to hurry, only a quiet invitation. The lantern swung gently in his hand as he walked, the mist parting just enough to show him the path, though it led nowhere in particular. He did not ask what he was meant to find. He only knew something waited, a name, a voice, perhaps only a feeling that had once lived inside him, but had since gone quiet. And so, with the candle flickering behind him, and the village asleep in its own secret silence, Sherlock walked not to solve, but to remember. And somewhere, just ahead, the fog seemed to shimmer, as if it too were trying to recall the shape of something almost lost. The path wound on gently, swallowed by fog that moved like breath across the earth. Sherlock Holmes, lantern in hand, followed where it led, though the road had no name and was marked on no map. The stones beneath his feet felt oddly familiar, as though he'd dreamed of them once, perhaps as a boy, perhaps as someone else entirely. And then through the curling mist, Wendelmere appeared, not so much seen as remembered. The village emerged softly from the fog, its rooftops sloping like shoulders at rest, its chimneys breathing out gentle trails of smoke that disappeared into the night air. The streets were lined with shuttered shops, their signs blank or faded, their windows glowing dimly from within. There were no footsteps, no voices, only the hush of stillness, the scent of cinnamon in the wind, and a feeling that something long forgotten had stirred. A small bell rang above a crooked door as Sherlock stepped into a tea shop that welcomed him without question. Velvet curtains hung heavy in the windows, catching the firelight that flickered from a hearth lined with coal and framed by well-loved books. A woman turned from the teapot, her shawl a quilt of many years, her smile soft as candlelight. "No charge here," she said, pouring tea into a china cup with roses faded by time, "only memories." Her name was Mrs. Lorne, though she did not offer it. Instead, she handed him a map drawn in charcoal, the lines uneven but careful, winding like a thought, trying to find its way home. "You're not here to solve, Mr. Holmes," she said, her voice the hush of wind through curtains. "You're here to remember." And in that moment, Sherlock felt the weight of something unnamed, not heavy, but hollow, a space where a memory might have once lived. From somewhere behind the fogged windows, a piano began to play, a fragile melody, slightly out of tune, wandering like the mist. Sherlock closed his eyes, and the music seemed to unlock something just behind the heart. A rain-soaked afternoon, a hand nearly taken, a name that had almost been spoken. Mrs. Lorne gestured gently to the back room. He passed through the draped curtain and into a space of still warmth, where a worn settee waited beside the fire. He sat without thought, the crackle of the coals wrapping around him like a lullaby. Shadows moved gently on the mantel. A photograph seemed to shift its expression when he wasn't looking, not haunting, just quietly different, as if it too were trying to remember what had once been true. Wendelmere didn't pretend to be real in the usual way. It tilted slightly when no one looked. The floor creaked differently under familiar feet. Time did not pass here. It curled and folded, like old paper softened by years. Sherlock touched the map once more, its charcoal edges dusting his fingers, and tucked it into his coat. This was not a case for logic, nor deduction. It was a case of the heart, of quiet recognition, the kind you carry for years without knowing. The fog outside curled at the edges of the window, waiting, and as he rose he did not feel urgency, but invitation. Something ahead, not to be solved but simply felt. Something that whispered, "You are almost home." Sherlock stepped lightly through the winding alleys, the map clutched carefully in his hand, its charcoal lines seeming to pulse softly beneath the moonlight. The air was cool and still, heavy with the scent of damp stone and ivy, until ahead, a gentle glow appeared, an ancient glass dome, cradled atop a hill, like a secret kept from time itself. The library within breathed quietly beneath its shimmering roof, a delicate hum filling the night air, as if the very books inside sang lullabies just beyond hearing. As he crossed the threshold, the soft crunch of gravel gave way to a floor dusted with rose petals, scattered like breadcrumbs, while books floated in gentle arcs above shelves, their pages fluttering slowly, like the wings of moths, whispering forgotten dreams, memories, woven not from words, but from feelings fading just out of reach. At the heart of the dome, bathed in a silver shaft of moonlight, stood a girl in a simple blue dress, barefoot and serene. She met his gaze without surprise, as though she had been waiting patiently for this moment through countless nights. "You came," she said quietly, her voice like the soft rustle of autumn leaves drifting on still water. She called herself Alira, though she was unsure if it was truly her name. She had been waiting, she told him, since before the pages faded. Her presence was gentle, but filled with a timeless weight, like the echo of a melody remembered, but never quite played. She led him to a shelf where one book sat worn and lonely, the one case he couldn't solve. Its last page was missing, the void aching like a wound. In his own memory, Elira closed her eyes and softly asked, "What do you keep when you give it away?" Her words fell softly around him, petals settling at his feet. The answer stirred inside him, a promise held quietly in the heart, growing stronger the more it was given. Among the fluttering pages, Sherlock found a loose sheet, its edges curled with age. The handwriting was unmistakable. His own. It was part of a letter, never sent, a fragment of a name he almost spoke, a hand he almost reached for, suspended in silence for decades. The library seemed to hold its breath as he traced the fading ink, memories weaving through the quiet space, like the distant, delicate notes of a piano drifting through the fog outside. Together, Sherlock and Elira stepped back into the village, which had shifted once more, revealing hidden corners and pathways that felt hauntingly familiar. An empty bench worn smooth by time, a house glimpsed only in dreams. The air carried the faint lullaby of a carousel turning softly in a quiet square, its painted horses moving as if alive, each one holding a small precious token, a glove, a rose, a violin, whispering stories of forgotten days. Nestled within the mouth of a porcelain fox on the carousel, Sherlock found a folded page, fragile and faded, the charcoal lines tracing a half-finished sentence, waiting silently to be completed. As Elira's eyes drank in the words, they glistened with something close to wonder, not sorrow. "You almost chose love," she said gently, a soft smile touching her lips. "That was the case, wasn't it? The one you never named." Under the glass dome, now reflecting distant stars even as clouds cloaked the sky, the missing page slipped quietly into the book's empty space. The cover closed with a soft sigh, not with answers, but with a calm sense of peace, as if long-held regrets were finally set free. The night held them in its gentle embrace, the library humming its lullaby once more, and Sherlock felt the quiet pull of a story not to solve, but to remember, an echo of what once almost was, and still might be, in the soft spaces between heartbeats. In the heart of Wendelmere's oldest garden, a solitary tree stood quiet beneath the soft glow of moonlight, its branches heavy not with ordinary leaves, but with shimmering threads of memory, each one delicate, translucent, and swaying gently, like rain caught in a slow breeze. Sherlock approached with care, the air around him alive with the faint rustle of silver leaves whispering stories untold, each one a fragment of a life folded into time. From the crook of a low bough, he reached out and lifted a single page, cool and fragile, humming softly in his palm. It was not a puzzle or a clue to unravel, but a moment forgotten, a quiet night, folded within its fibers, waiting patiently to be remembered again. As the memory unfolded before him, like a tender dream, Sherlock saw a firelit parlor bathed in the flicker of candlelight, a teacup left untouched on the table, and the soft, hesitant opening of a heart. A woman sat waiting, her eyes full of a hope unspoken, offering love in the silence where words never came. He remembered how he turned away then, not out of coldness, but in the name of reason and logic, letting the moment slip away like smoke dissolving into the dark. Turning to Elira, he saw her anew, not as a distant ethereal figure, but as something more real, more present, less dream, and more meaning. "I was never someone else," she whispered softly, her voice like wind through curtains. "I was you, or the part of you that lingered, quietly waiting." In that gentle confession, Sherlock understood the truth. This was the case that was never missing, the mystery not found in shadowed alleys or hidden clues, but nestled deep within himself. The vanishing heart he sought had never truly left. It had only been set aside long ago, buried beneath layers of thought and duty, waiting now to be gently reclaimed. Outside, the first light of dawn began to touch the fog-drenched stones, spilling warmth and gold over the mist, as Wendelmere began to fade softly, not vanishing, but folding back into the quiet places where dreams begin and end. The village slipped like a whispered secret into the edges of memory, the spaces behind thought where it had been born. Back inside the tea shop, Mrs. Lorne poured one last cup, the steam curling slowly into the air. Her eyes met Sherlock's with a knowing kindness. "Did you find what you weren't looking for?" she asked, her voice steady and calm. Sherlock nodded gently, a quiet smile touching his lips. Not every question needed an answer. Some were meant simply to be held in the heart. Alira stood nearby, her form growing more luminous as the fading light softened her edges. "You remembered," she said, her voice like the hush just before sleep. "Not to solve, but to feel. That was the only clue you ever needed." In that moment, Sherlock felt no sorrow or regret, only a peaceful stillness, a warmth blooming quietly where misunderstanding had once lived. Love, he realized, does not vanish. It waits patiently to be noticed again, to be welcomed home in the quiet moments of a restless heart. As he stepped away from Wendelmere, the ticking that had followed him all night, the steady ancient clock marking time and case after case, finally stilled. It was not broken, but no longer needed. In the silence that followed was a gentle peace. In that stillness, the soft beginning of rest, as if the heart at last had found the final clue it had been seeking all along. Sherlock woke slowly in his study, the candle's flickering flame casting soft shadows as dawn began to seep through the windows. Where the letter had once rested, a single pressed rose lay quietly on the sill, its faint fragrance mingling with the cool morning air. He moved with gentle purpose, placing the kettle on the stove as the first soft whistle rose like a lullaby, filling the room with warmth. Sunlight stretched slowly across the floorboards, catching dust motes that drifted lazily in its glow, while outside a distant piano played a slow, wistful melody that seemed to carry the weight of memory itself. The breeze shifted the curtain, bringing the fresh scent of rain and lavender, wrapping the room in a tender embrace. Opening his worn journal, Sherlock wrote not to solve but simply to remember how it felt to let go, to find peace in what had once seemed lost. There was no need to search further. The mystery had softened into quiet acceptance, a calm that settled deep within him. Leaning back in his familiar chair, feeling its comforting creak beneath him, he closed his eyes, resting at last in the gentle stillness of home and the promise of a new day. The world has hushed now, even the wind moves softly, a quiet whisper that holds everything gentle and still. The mystery Sherlock carried is no longer waiting for answers. It is resting, like a delicate feather drifting slowly through the calm night air. The lantern by his side dimmed steadily, its flame shrinking down to a soft ember glowing faintly, like a distant star watching over the quiet room. There is no need to see more tonight. No more pages to turn or riddles to solve. The final page folds closed gently, like eyelids settling over tired eyes, and the warmth of the story lingers softly in the air. Take a slow, deep breath in and exhale out softly. Let the rhythm of your breath move like gentle waves around you, steady and kind, carrying away all tension and hurry. There is nothing pulling you forward now. You are exactly where you need to be. In this peaceful moment of rest, the ticking of the clock grows faint, nearly fading away, as if even time itself has grown tired and paused. This quiet now, this stillness, is all that matters, and it is enough. Outside, the village of Wendelmere curls back into soft fog, then folds into the quiet shimmer of stars above, a dream folding back into the night sky. And there, in the heart of the calm, the old detective finally sleeps, a gentle smile resting softly upon his face. All that was once lost is now simply held in the tender quiet, inviting you two to drift softly into dreams.